Welcome to this week's edition of Australian Mining's on the Bench, where we discuss the issues that are affecting the industry. So this week, unsurprisingly, we'll be discussing the issue of the federal budget. And in that, of course, there was the major topic of profit shifting and tax avoidance by major corporations, and of course, the removal of the tax breaks for fly-in, fly-out and drive-in, drive-out miners. So last week we discussed in detail the issue of profit shifting and how miners were being accused of not paying any tax. So Ben, do you just want to give us a bit of a refresher on that? In
the last On the Bench video, we talked about how BHP were the focus of the Senate inquiry. They copped a grilling over, the amount of tax that they avoid paying Australia by on selling commodities, iron ore, to their Singapore marketing hub. Whether it's that much money over a period of 8 years to the Australian government, well, that's up to them, I suppose. But there's a lot of song and dance about how, Rio Tinto and BHP might be pulled into these new tax avoidance rules that Joe Hockey is introducing. And
they said they'll come down quite hard. I mean, they said there'll be major penalties such as the tax, paying all the tax itself, 100% of the tax that they owe, as well as penalties and fines. So it's...
Look, personally, I think BHP and Rio are going to fly under the radar. There's a bit of a back door. The rules that have been announced, if I can just read them, it applies to, in certain instances, it applies to foreign multinationals with a global revenue of over 1 billion Australian dollars, so we've got a tick there, which supplies goods or services to Australians. Does BHP supply goods or services to Australians? Technically it does, but by and large, not really. It sells things to the rest of the world. You've got where the sales revenue is channeled to tax havens. Again, there's a tick. But also, a key rule is that where the principal purpose of the scheme is to avoid tax. Now, is BHP's marketing hub, is it principally to avoid tax on paper?
Well, they claim it's value adding. That's what they're doing.
They do say that, yes. I don't know what value they're actually adding. I mean, do they do any special comminution in Singapore, or does the ore actually touch Singapore at any time? I don't think it does. It gets shipped from Australia to the client.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not really for us to look in.
Not really, no.
BHP, Rio, Fortescue, they all do it.
They all use Singapore as a base to sell things from.
So did Glencore as well, until actually the Senate inquiry where they announced they will be closing their marketing hub in Singapore.
Right.
So that's an interesting outcome.
But if BHP, Rio and Fortescue can show that the principal purpose of their marketing hubs is to negotiate with clients in Asia and have a neutral ground where they can do business, well, that would not be a principal purpose of tax avoidance.
Yeah. Interesting outcome there. And now I guess we'll move to the major issue that's really ignited, I wouldn't say debate, but just anger on our social media, and that is the removal of the zone tax offset for fly-in, fly-out and drive-in, drive-out miners. Now, they have been specifically targeted in this, with the government looking to cut them completely out of it, saying that since they fly in, work there, and then, say, go back to Perth, then they don't really require it because that is no longer their place of residence. Perth is their place of residence. So they're not under any hardship per se, even though they could spend 9 months out of the year working in the desert. Now, they only make up about 32% of people claiming the zone tax offset. So the government's planning to bring in $100 million in the first year from this. Now, the mining industry is already under a bit of strain. FIFO itself is a difficult job, and to remove some of the few benefits as such, it's really hit these miners hard, and they're just angry. So, Ben, I guess as a former FIFO miner yourself, why don't you give us a bit of an insight into how they feel?
Yeah, well, this is actually pretty close to my heart as an issue. I have been able to claim this tax offset a few times over the course of 6 years. It applies to people who have done more than 186 days out bush at work within certain remote zones, which applies to a lot of the Pilbara, places in South Australia, that type of thing. And it's about $1,000.
And they did specifically say the Pilbara in the budget statements. They said this tax offset, we will be specifically targeting and excluding fly-in, fly-out miners, such as people who live in Perth, travel to the Pilbara and return to Perth to their families. So it is very targeted.
Yeah, look, personally, I think it's totally, it's a bit of an attack on FIFO workers. When I say we, I as a former FIFO worker, FIFO workers work very hard for their money. They go out bush. These are hard-working Australians. These are very unpleasant, climates and conditions to work in. You got to spend a long time away from your family. And, whatever sort of bonus you can get on your tax as an incentive to do that type of thing, well, people should be entitled to that. So to take it away is a little bit of an insult. But the worst thing of all is this morning I was reading the comments from, I don't like to pick on anyone in particular, but Michelle Landry does like to pick on FIFO workers. And she kind of rubbed people's faces in it when she said, what was her quote? Other people who simply fly in and fly out from capital city areas contribute nothing to our regional communities and shouldn't be getting the benefit of his own tax rebate. Now, I know that Michelle Landry is fiercely defensive of her constituents and wants them to be able to work in mines like Cavill Ridge. But why she wants to attack FIFO workers, I don't know. This zone tax rebate doesn't do any harm to her constituents for FIFO workers to get it wherever in Australia they are. How can you say they don't deserve it when these are hard-working Australians? I don't think you can make that type of claim.
And the thing is, it's not going to have a flow-on effect in such that the tax is going to target other people who claim it. I mean, people who live in these remote rural areas will still be able to claim this tax offset.
Yeah, absolutely. It's no skin off their noses. But I think that it's a bit unreasonable.
Yeah, so a lot of outrage, but if you have any comments or you have anything to say and you'd like to air it, we're always happy to hear it on our website, miningstraya.com.au, or you can hit us up on our Facebook, just look up Australian Mining. So it'd be great if you could subscribe, keep us in the loop, we'll keep you in the loop. Just click on the link up here, and thanks very much for listening.
Hey, have a good weekend.
Cheers, guys.